To today's webinar, Strategies for Successful Relocation. I'm Nicole Skelski, a member of your Walden Career Services advising team, and again, I'll be your moderator. I would like to, before we move on and introduce our presenter, just mention that the topic for today's webinar was prompted on our LinkedIn group through some discussions that many Walden students were having about raising the question of whether it's best to start looking for positions before you move to your new goal or objective relocation, or to do that after you move. So that prompted this topic, and we decided to address strategies for successful relocation, as we have our presenter today, Lisa Cook, the Director of Career Services. She and many of us have gone through a relocation, and we're sharing different strategies and kind of our stories today. And for those of you not familiar with the Career Services team, we have a slide here of our team. Again, I'm Nicole, second from the left, and Lisa Cook, Director of Career Services, is our presenter today, front and center on the screen. And Career Services, our mission is to help prepare Walden students, our learners, to navigate career transition through educating and coaching and advising. And again, here is our team, and I will pass it on to Lisa Cook. And before we actually jump in, we are going to get some feedback from you, our audience, and address with a poll here. So if you all could type in, describe your relocation situation into the chat box. That would be helpful. So for example, is your situation, are you looking to move and looking for jobs now in your current location? Are you just on the webinar because you love to watch our webinars? Maybe you're in a role where you coach others on relocation and want to find out some strategies?
Or are you in a situation where you have to move due to a spouse relocation or other personal circumstances? So you have a specific move date that you have to be in a certain location by. So which situation describes your current situation?
Okay, it looks like we have some chatting in. Okay, so some of you, that's an interesting point. I'm willing to locate or relocate anywhere in the world. Where can I find employment? Okay, so maybe we can hold that question. That's actually a great question to address too at the end. I like it. Okay, I'm a master's in mental health counseling student relocating to my practicum. Okay, moving to DC, from DC, excuse me, to Arizona. New career, new city.
Very exciting.
Okay, looking for full-time employment anywhere. So I'm actually going to make a note of that. Many of you are open to anywhere options, so maybe we can address some of that. Looking and to move and looking for jobs in other states and abroad. Full-time employment anywhere. Okay, thank you for sharing those. And any of you moving because of a spouse, or you're in the military and you have to move, that type of situation. Okay, we have a few more coming in. Oh, great. Looking for a job out of state, prefer not to move until a position has been secured. Okay, have flexibility in my timeline and open to location. Excellent. That's from Kelly. Looking for information on how to best explain my relocation due to potential practicum. So we have a few practicum situations. I'll be looking for a job next summer because my spouse will have to relocate. This could happen once a year for the next few years. Okay, thank you for sharing that. Looking to move to a new town after I get married in a year. Want to get in my career in my new city in Rochester, Minnesota, and I live in the Twin Cities. Okay, excellent. Looking for a job next summer. Okay, I already addressed that one. Sorry about that. Also interested in that. Okay, excellent. I have a master's in public health, interested in moving to a new city and state, specifically Portland, Oregon, also searching for full-time employment. From Toby. Okay, excellent. Thank you for sharing that. That'll help us to address, we will be addressing some of these stories and your questions as we move along. And with that, I will transfer and pass it on to Lisa to get started with our topic.
Great, thanks, Nicole. So the topics we're going to be covering, and I'm interested because a lot of you said you're willing to go anywhere, so hopefully some of these questions that I'm going to prompt you to ask yourself at the beginning of our webinar will help you narrow that field down, because it's a pretty huge playing field if I say that I'm willing to relocate anywhere for a position. So there are key questions you want to ask yourself just to make sure that that target place and your future job are going to meet your needs. So that's our first topic. Then we're going to be talking about researching information on future places as well as jobs, and then acting as if. So simulating your relocation by going there and finding out what would it be like to actually live there, and then finally making connections for a successful transition after you've moved to your new area. So next slide. So the first thing I'm going to ask is key questions to consider regarding your future home and your job prospects, because what you don't want to happen is you don't want to take the time and the energy and the resources to move to a new place and then ask, oh my gosh, what have I done? So we want to keep you from doing that. So we're going to go through some factors. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay. It's not. Okay, great. So there are about 10 factors here, and these slides will be archived with the webinar, so just keep that in mind. You don't have to take copious notes about all this. You'll have access to this. But the first thing, do you want to live in a city or a small town or a rural area? What fits your personality and your interests the best? Because the size of a town will determine so many factors in terms of activities, things to do, the community feel, just so many factors that go into that. So, and what's the health of the local economy and the job market like for your specific career field? So, for example, if you're in organizational psychology and it's a town of, population 100, are there opportunities there, or are there virtual opportunities for you? So, you've got to look at that health of the local economy and what the job market is like for your field. So also the housing market and the cost of living. So what's that like? There are resources where you can find out a certain salary, how far it will go in other cities. Is the climate conducive to your health and your interests? Are there geographic amenities? Is the terrain to your liking? For example, there are people that will move to a state such as Florida, and if they've been in a mountainous area, they'll say, this is so flat, it's so boring, I really miss the mountains. So, geographic amenities make a difference, okay? And there is a website, Sperling's Best Places. It's bestplaces.net, that you can take a best place quiz to ask yourself some of these factors. Okay, and looking at other factors, what's the commuting time like? Is there public transportation if that's important to you? What's the educational system like, both at the K-12 and the higher education level? Will you have access to family and friends? And if they are not going to be in your future location, how close are you going to be to the nearest airport to go and see them? And what's the convenience of health care like? And also shopping and activities you enjoy, such as cultural activities, sporting events, and even food options. I've heard people talk about there aren't enough restaurants in my area. I really miss that. I came from a bigger location to a smaller location. There just aren't as many restaurants to eat out at. What's the crime rate like? And also, last but not least, what's the taxes? Is there sales tax? Is there income tax? That might be important to you financially. So those are some important factors to consider. So the next topic I'm going to cover is how can you research to find the answers to some of these key questions? Okay, and so a website that I came across that I really liked is called Sperling's Best Places. As I mentioned, there's a pop quiz you can take on there to find out if a area is to your liking. And so I put in our local area. We live in the Twin Cities. All the career services advisors and myself, we're located in Minneapolis, St. Paul. So I put in St. Paul to find out what Sperling's had to offer. And so I found out the population of St. Paul. I found out, you can see there's even information on housing. I found out the unemployment rate, if we look in that right column, because I was keying in on the economy in St. Paul. I think that was really important. If I'm looking at potential jobs, what's the job market like for my field? So I started with looking at the economy. So you can see the unemployment rate is 5.3%. That's under the national average, which is 8.6. You know, when they talk about future job growth being 34.5%, which is also above the national average. So I'm thinking to myself, this looks like a pretty good economy. I can look at the sales and the income tax rates there. I can find out average household income. And also, if I look further down that right-hand screenshot, I can find out the population by occupation. And so there are a lot of people, about a fourth of the St. Paul residents are in professional and related occupations. And you can see how many are in sales, construction. So that kind of gives me a breakdown of what that local job market is like. So it's a great site, so you can put in, you know, your city that you're considering and find out information like this. Next slide, please. The other great resource that I explored was the U.S. Census. And, you know, we have recent census data that was released, and they have this new feature called the American Community Survey. And so, again, I put in St. Paul, and I put in information to find out, you know, other factors about what it would be like to work in St. Paul. So what's the commute like? You can see in the left-hand side, they have education, marital status, relationships, like, so what are households composed of in St. Paul? Then I look at the second bullet, incomes, employment, occupation, commuting to work. And then I can look at other things, like what's the racial demographic of the city and what are housing units, you know, like. And so there's just so much here. So, again, I looked at, you know, what's going to be related to employment. The commute to work, it looks pretty reasonable. I think the mean travel time to work is about 22 minutes. I relocated from the Washington, D.C. area, and the mean time there must be at least twice that. So that's a pretty good commute time in my opinion. But again, I can look at the breakdown by occupation. I can also look at the breakdown by industry. So, and the links to these resources will be at the end of this webinar, so you'll have those links. But I just think information like this gives you, you know, just the insider scoop on what the local economy is like. Next slide, please. So beyond that, you know, how is the job market? I got the big overall statistics from the U.S. Census and from Sperling's, but now I got to look for actual jobs in my field. So I'm going to look at both big job boards like Career Builder and Monster and Indeed. I'm going to Google jobs in my area, and I'm also going to look at like the business journals for the city that I'm relocating to, and maybe Craigslist and some of the more local job boards available. I'm also going to look at Twitter, and I'm also going to look at LinkedIn to find jobs in my area. So I'm going to just, you know, look at and see, you know, how many listings are coming up for business analysts, for example, in my area. You know, if it's only a few, that might tell me that, boy, there's not much of a job market for my field there. So I'm going to start looking at that. So questions to consider. Now, I was posing questions early on about the location, but also there are important questions to ask yourself with regards to your future job. Once you start interviewing and exploring possible opportunities, will you enjoy the new job? What is the future for that employer and for that position? Will you learn and advance in that new job? What's the culture of your future employer? And also, it's always good to have a plan B. So what is your backup plan if things don't work out? And the big $20,000 question, in my opinion, do the benefits of relocating for this job outweigh the obstacles of relocating? So important questions to ask yourself. And now on the lighter and more fun side, what about life beyond work? Well, it's good to visit city and tourism sites. And here you'll see a screenshot of the Minneapolis city website. And just want to reassure you all that it does not snow in Minnesota 12 months of the year. Notice that they put like a snow scene on the bottom left, but they also put some scenes where, you know, Minnehaha Falls is not frozen on the right-hand side. So they're trying to let people know that, you know, we can have sunny and blue skies and no snow in the Twin Cities also. But anyway, just I'm being a little facetious here, but, you know, be sure to look at the city and tourism sites to find out if they've got the types of amenities that you're going to be taking advantage of on your free time. Next slide, please. Okay, so my next topic is acting as if, because I think it's one thing to go on vacation to a place, and actually a colleague of mine who lives in Santa Fe, who I spoke to extensively about this, said this about her town, that people would visit Santa Fe, New Mexico, and would absolutely fall in love with the art and the culture there, but actually when they moved there, they found out that they're not spending 365 days a year on the plaza and, you know, seeing the scenic parts of, you know, Santa Fe. They've got to go to work, and it's like any other place that you live. Eventually, you have to get used to that daily grind, and so it's good to act as if you're living there, not just in the optimal times of the year, but go there when the weather's tough, and go and really find out what it's like to actually live there. So the next slide, I'm going to go into some ways that you can do that. I call this your relocation simulation. So you can visit your destination in a non-vacation season. So for example, if you're coming to the Twin Cities, I'd say January is our toughest month, and I think that'd be a good time to visit, because if you can get through January, you're in good stead with our winters here. Talk to people who live there and work for your potential future employer to get the inside scoop on both your location and your future job. There's a fantastic website, citydata.com, where you can find out what people are talking about in that city in terms of good schools, good neighborhoods. You can post questions and watch what people are chatting about there to really get a feel for what it's like to live there. You can participate in professional meetings, informational meetings and interviews, meetups, visit churches, schools. It's really good to get as much information as possible. You can join LinkedIn and Meetup groups for your future location. I would suggest driving all over the area, not just the hot spots, not just where the tourists hang out, but where the locals go as well. And be sure to check out housing and other key factors that are important to you. So bottom line, to go there in non-vacation mode. So now we are going to share stories of 2 successful moves. And fortunately today, we have a guest with us, a guest panelist, Kelly Kieper, who actually is a Walden academic advisor as well as an HR management student. And she has made 3 successful moves. And so I'm going to hand it to Kelly to tell you her story. Kelly?
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Hi.
Hi. So I have moved quite a bit throughout my career, and what I have really noticed that has really worked well for me is, one, making a plan. I'm a planner. I know a lot of you had said that you're willing to move anywhere in the world, but when you have such a vast ocean out there, it's better to narrow it down at least a little bit, and I think that some of those slides beforehand that she was showing to us would help you narrow down that field a little bit. So once I decided where it was that I wanted to relocate to, and a few of them were personal relocations. The one to San Diego was a personal relocation. When I relocated to Chicago, it was basically to find a better career. And then when I relocated from San Diego to Tempe, Arizona, my most recent relocation, that was due to my husband getting a job transfer here. So that's how I ended up here. But I planned and I saved money, especially for the move from Chicago to San Diego. I had always wanted to live in California, and I had a good job in Chicago, but I just wasn't happy with it, and I wanted to make a move. So I saved up money, had a goal in mind, and I quit my job and moved to San Diego. And a lot of people are probably thinking, well, that's really risky, but I did a lot of research beforehand. I did apply for jobs before moving there. I ended up moving in with a friend of mine that already lived out there, secured my apartment, and once I secured my apartment and had an address, I started putting that on all of my resumes and my cover letters. Now I will say this, you definitely don't want to mislead your potential employers about you actually already being in the area, because that's not going to work to either of your advantage. Once they find out you're not actually in the area, they might see that as a red flag that you're not a reliable person. So definitely be upfront about, your intention to move, be very clear and distinct about when you're planning to move. And I successfully set up a couple interviews when I did move to San Diego, and I actually landed 2 jobs within a couple months of my move, and was able to choose between the 2 as far as which one that I wanted that was more lucrative offer for me. And I used large job boards like Career Builder, Monster, things like that, in order to find different job opportunities for what I was looking for. I also made a career change. When I was in Chicago, I was working in advertising for a really large company, and I wanted to get back into the field of education, which I was successfully able to do upon my transition move from Chicago to San Diego. Additionally, I updated my LinkedIn. I updated even my Facebook, because a lot of employers are now looking at Facebook to get more information about you as a potential employee with the new information as far as my new location. But again, to put that in your cover letter to be clear that you're not there yet, but you do intend upon moving in X months. You will be out in that location so that you can successfully set up an appointment to do an interview with them. You'll also want to build your network on LinkedIn is really important as well. So that way you can hear about potential job opportunities and in different locations that you may be interested in going to. You also need to have really strong references in your field as well. So for instance, if I go for a job change like I did when I moved from Chicago to San Diego, I made sure that my references were all strong references from my past in the field of education, because I had worked in it while I was in school before, but not a professional full-time job. And you want to make sure that your interviewing skills are strong too. A lot of times nowadays you will get a phone interview before actually landing a in-person interview, and that's how you really want to be able to sell yourself. Be open and upfront with them about not technically being in the location yet, but just make sure that you have really strong communication skills and really sell them on the phone, so that way they're more interested in meeting you and having you come out and waiting for you, because they're so excited about you that maybe there's other people in the area that they're not so excited about, because as a result of your phone call, your resume, and your cover letter and references, that they're willing to wait that amount of time to go ahead and interview you over human resources that they might already have in the area. And that's pretty much all I have. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Kelly. And maybe we'll get some good questions for your stories with regards to how you did it at the end. So thank you. So now we're going to go, and I will tell my own personal story. So this is Lisa Cook, and I relocated from Washington, D.C. to Minnesota. And so it was a very, very big contrast in terms of climate and culture and a lot of things. But anyway, I just thought I'd share my own personal story, because I did relocate 7 years ago to the position here at Walden, and it's worked out great. But I did a lot of research, and I did some of the same strategies that Kelly mentioned. So next slide, please. Okay, so basically the way I approached it is that I decided that I wanted to move to the Twin Cities. I actually was born here, and my parents moved to Washington, D.C. when I was a year old, but I decided I wanted to explore what it would be like to live in the place where I'd been born, and I have relatives here, so that was my first thing, was deciding on my location. And then I started to apply for multiple positions. I indicated in the cover letter when I applied that I had ties to the Twin Cities. I have relatives here, and I was very interested in relocating and available for interviews. And so as Kelly mentioned, screen interviews by phone are very common. I had phone screening interviews for 3 positions, and actually ended up being scheduled for 3 in-person interviews for all those jobs within a 2-day period. And so I took advantage of making the trip to conduct those interviews to take advantage and really look and see what the Twin Cities would be like. So I spent a week here. I did a volunteer project. I attended a professional association meeting as well as a seminar by an expert in career development. I conducted several informational interviews, which I arranged in advance through cold calling. And what I did was I actually had, when I was called for the in-person interview, I was the employer that I interviewed with agreed that they would pay for that trip. And what I did is I called another employer and said, I know you haven't decided on second interviews yet, but I'm going to be in the area, so if you're interested, I'm going to be traveling. I'm going to be there this particular week. And actually, I ended up lining up an interview that way because I wanted to maximize the fact. I mean, it was a 1,300-mile trip, so I wanted to maximize being here and line up as much as possible. And I was still under consideration for all 3 jobs when my offer with Walden came through, and it was a great opportunity. I decided to accept it. So that's My personal story was to decide on location and then start to apply for jobs, simulate living here. I mean, I looked at housing, I looked at, traffic patterns. I looked at a lot of different things when I was here for this week. I talked to as many people, both people I was related to, but also new people that I met at volunteer events about what it would be like to live here. So I think that was really valuable. I was really sure that I was making the right decision when I accepted the offer. So, and so lessons learned, I would say, talk to other transplants. When I mean transplants, I mean people who have moved to your future location from other places. Talk to transplants who are similar to you in age and lifestyle, not just the natives. For example, my uncle said, you'll get used to snow on the ground 6 months of the year, no problem. Well, he's lived here his entire life, so of course he would say that. He's never lived any other place to know anything different. So it's important that you talk to people who have moved to your future location from other places. Post questions on citydata.com to get the inside scoop from residents. Spend time in your future location in the off-season. So remember I said earlier, not just in vacation mode, but, pick the worst time of year weather-wise. If it's the rainy season or if it's winter, but pick the toughest weather time and visit then. Visit libraries and stores and places you'll frequent. Act as if you are already living there. And also keep in mind your network. Family and friends who live there, who maybe you could stay with or who could help you in terms of moving there, and will you be able to find what I call your tribe, people for you to build a really strong social and personal and professional network with. So, and then our final topic, so making connections for a successful transition. Okay, so once you've moved to your new place, or even beforehand, you can try this out. There are a lot of resources out there to connect with people. So a big one is Meetup.com. It's basically a social networking site for personal interests. And you can see here I put in the city of Atlanta, and then these are the different topics I can search under, education and learning. I mean, you can see the whole menu down there. Fitness, cars and motorcycles, pretty much something for everyone. Literature and writing, photography, parents and family, sports and recreation, sci-fi, religion. I mean, so there's just something for everyone in terms of these social groups to get together. And the way it works is you just create a personal profile. You can put a picture up or not and just put basic information about yourself. And then you will go on and find meetups that relate to your personal interests. So maybe you drink coffee, so you want to join a coffee meetup or a book club. And then you find out when they're meeting, and you sign up, and you just attend the meetup, and people are there to meet new people. So it's a great way to make new connections. So next slide, please. Okay, and also LinkedIn groups. Okay, so basically I chose to put in Atlanta as a search function, and I clicked on groups to narrow down the search, because otherwise it would bring up companies in Atlanta and people in Atlanta, but I just wanted to find groups in Atlanta. And you can see there are 3,121 results for Atlanta groups. And so if you start to look down, I mean, Atlanta Linking is a huge group with 10,000 members where you'll just meet people from all different career fields in the Atlanta area. There's an Atlanta Young Professionals, and then you can see their career field specific ones. So for example, SHRM Atlanta would be the Society for Human Resource Management. So you'll find all different types of networking groups on LinkedIn, and you can go on and you can post, what is it like to live there, or I'm looking for a job in this particular field. Does anyone have any suggestions? So it's a great way to build connections with people in your future location. Also, you can search for Walden students and alumni and colleagues from other employers and schools in your target location as well. Next slide, please. Also, and especially with our social change mission here at Walden, you can network with people through volunteering, whether it's the Walden Service Network or volunteermatch.org to find volunteer opportunities in your new area. Next slide. Also, a really great new resource is nextdoor.com. So when you land in your new location and you move into your new home, you can log on to nextdoor.com. It's a secure network. It's based on where you live, and so you'll find people in your neighborhood. If there's a nextdoor.com community already built, and if there is not, you can start one. So basically, they will work with you to outline what your neighborhood looks like in terms of the geographic boundaries, And then they'll ask you to go and invite your neighbors, and once you have 10 neighbors up, then you are officially a Nextdoor.com community. I started one in my own community, and we have about 100 neighbors on there now. And it's great because people are trading information on, how good is the school system, or what's a good plumber, or who's a good electrician that I could hire to do work on my house. I mean, they're trading all types of really neat and interesting advice. So, and it's a great way for neighbors who might not know each other offline, at least to connect online, to connect offline later. So it's a great resource. So now we are going to open it up to questions. So Nicole, do we have some good questions in there to address?
Okay, so someone says, I have no prior experience in my field, and I'm making a move to another city. So how do I get my foot in the door in my new city?
That's a really, that's a tough question because it's a double-pronged one, because you're going to have to build networking contacts and experience at the same time. So I'd love to know if you actually have to move to that new city, or if you're choosing to move to that new city. What I would suggest, because I don't know your timeline, is I would make my top priority gaining some experience in your field, because what's going to happen is you're going to be competing in a new place with people who might already be known in that area who also have experience. So what I would do, whatever time you have left in your current location, I would volunteer to get some experience to put on my resume. And I would really, that would be my top priority, because that's going to be two major hurdles to jump. But I'd also start networking in the new area, maybe joining a LinkedIn group and finding out what the qualifications are and getting to know people also. I mean, there's always the chance, although I think it's kind of a slim chance, that if you impress people and you get to know them and you show your transferable skills, that they might hire you. But just, you're coming in from another area with no experience. So I'd try to solve the one thing that I could solve more easily at this point, and that would be gaining experience where I currently am.
And I would maybe add, so gaining that experience maybe through volunteering where you are.
Right. Right.
Okay, excellent. We have another question. So William asks, could I ask for relocation, and I think he says he means paid relocation, even if it was not offered yet by the company I am moving to or getting a job with, I suppose.
You can always ask, but chances are if you've already accepted the offer and they've already laid out all the terms, it's going to be an uphill challenge to get relocation at this point. I would advise, just for future reference, if you are asking for relocation, to ask for it when you're negotiating the terms of an offer, because that's when you're in the best bargaining position. But you can always ask. I mean, perhaps they have a budget for that, and perhaps they want to help you with that. You can always ask. So I would definitely take a shot at it. Or maybe they would split it with you. Maybe they could cover, maybe they could cover part of it.
Okay, so Shaylin was the previous who asked the previous question, and she said, to answer your question, yes, she has to move. The experience hopefully will come from her practicum. So the practicum is really, that's going to be key to help you to build experience and build your network and get references. So if you were concerned about references, that'll help. And she says, I'm trying to do my practicum in my new place. Okay, so maybe you haven't found a site yet. And by the way, Shaylin, we have many resources to help you to market yourself for a practicum on our Career Center website. So I would definitely recommend that you view the archive webinars page there. Okay, someone else asked, is there a website that has companies in which they have locations abroad? So if you're a U.S. citizen, how do you go about moving to another country? Okay, so Blanca, I'm actually going to answer that question for you. We have built up, I mean, I can't off the top of my head give you a specific website off the top of my head again, but on our website we have built up international resources, an extensive list of websites and about moving abroad. Transitions abroad is one. So if you go to the Career Center website, any of you who are interested in looking into abroad opportunities, we also recommend some books. You go to our resources tab and then click on international resources. So again, we have extensive resources, and a lot of times you can just Google it. I do know transitionsabroad.com is a good website as well. Many of it is for speaking English abroad, but I'm sure if you do some Google searches, maybe look at Inc. magazine, Forbes magazine, you could find out some of the big Fortune 500, you know, looking up the top U.S. multinational companies that have offices abroad, things like that. Okay, any other questions before we wrap up? Okay, so thank you again for joining us. Here's the list of resources that Lisa's put together. Fabulous resources here, again from Census, Money Magazine, Finding Your Best Place. So it sounds like me also being the moderator, I've learned, you know, do your research, come up with a plan, really go visit and scope it out unless, you know, you have to move. But even so, you know, doing your research, even if you have to move, so if you're planned in advance, then, you know, you won't come across surprises when you get over to your new location. So final thoughts, we must be willing to let go of the life we have planned so as to accept the life that is waiting for us, and life begins at the end of your comfort zone. So great quotes to leave you with. And Lisa, anything you want to?
I would just like to thank you all for attending, and remember the Career Services Center can support you as you undergo transitions like this one, because making a move is a major transition. It's always good to have people in your corner supporting you. And also, I just want to say a special thanks to Kelly Kieper for joining us and sharing her stories today. So thank you all very much, and have a great rest of your day.